G'day everyone, welcome to my AFL season predictions. I'll be going through every team and where I think they'll finish in 2023. It's just a prediction, so please don't give me hate if I put your team low. So let's kick off the video. I have Hawthorn winning the wooden spoon, winning only 2 games out of 23 with an abysmal percentage. Why would you let your best players go? They just lost around 1,000 games of experience in the middle of a rebuild. They now have the most inexperienced list in the competition because of that horrific move. They are a team that can win as the underdog, but I feel they are so far below other teams' experience. I don't think their fixture is too bad, but there are a lot of teams around them that can easily shoot up the ladder. For their biggest win, I've gone with a 45-point victory over the Saints. This is going to be a shock win. There have been years where the wooden spooner won a game by over 50 points. Examples are Brisbane in 2017 and Melbourne in 2009, both against the Fremantle Dockers. And in Hawthorn's worst game of the season, I have predicted a 144-point annihilation in the hands of Melbourne. No team has ever won by that much since 2014, so it's a pretty big call. It just goes to show how bad my feelings are for Hawthorn ahead of the AFL season. In second last, I have the GWS Giants, not much better than Hawthorn, with only 4 wins in their 23 games. A little bit like Hawthorn, they've lost a lot of great talent, and while they do have some up-and-coming players, I highly doubt that they'll be able to effectively compete against teams above them. I feel like they're a team that you don't know where they are heading in terms of a rebuild. Yes, they have a fairly talented coach in Adam Kingsley, but with their poor talent, I don't know how much and how long it's going to take for them to get used to Kingsley's new game plan. I've got them recording a dominant 39-point win over the Hawks. Generally, the 17th place team, the easiest win, is against a team below them. I feel like they're one level of skill ahead of Hawthorn, and just like any bottom team, the Giants can easily cop a 100-plus point loss. So I am predicting a horrid Giants display against Geelong at the Cattery. It's Geelong against GMHBA against the bottom team, so it's self-explanatory. In 16th spot, I've got West Coast with 5 wins and a percentage significantly higher than GWS's and Hawthorn's. I have tipped them to be in a drawn game. I don't think they'll do as bad as last year, but realistically, I still don't think they're good enough to escape the bottom 4. It doesn't help that Josh Kennedy has retired, as now they are lacking their identity. They are also lacking young talent, and you need both young and decently aged talent to be a good team. Also, a lot of their older star players are very injury prone. If they're going to jump out of the bottom 4, they're going to need to find some new younger talent, as I feel like they've been over-relying on their older players who are quite burnt out. For their biggest win, I've gone with a comfortable 37-point win over the Giants. Recent history says GWS haven't been playing well at Optus. And for their biggest loss, I have them losing by 105 points against Melbourne. I just don't see West Coast starting well, and Melbourne always have a strong start to the season. In 15th spot, I have the Saints winning 7 games, but with a percentage lower than West Coast. It's a big slide from 10th to the bottom 4. I don't know what it was, but they were so uncompetitive after the bye. I just feel their quality on their list is lower than most teams, especially with Max King out for I don't know how long. They are a very inconsistent team that you can never predict if and when they are going to be at their best or worst. They're still not a bad team on paper with the likes of Gresham, Marshall and Hill, but I feel like other teams have worked out their game style. If Ross Lyon doesn't change and conceal their game plan, they'll be set for quite a drop. I've got them beating the Hawks pretty comfortably in their best game of the season. They usually play well against Hawthorn, and this is a massive call, but I've got them losing to Geelong by 130 points. I just feel like they're going to be on a big slump in the end of the season, as that's when their fixture is at its toughest. St Kilda are one team that has very low lows and decent highs. In 14th spot, I have the Bulldogs with the same record as the Saints but a much better percentage. Sometimes you have to make big calls. They're hard to predict for sure. They lost some talent in Josh Dunkley, and they had the decent addition of Rory Lobb. Why I say decent? Rory Lobb at his best is a star, but he's inconsistent. Also, sometimes when a team makes the finals undeservedly, or when there were better teams below them that deserve to take their eventual position, they drop off the next year. We saw that in 2021. If Richmond and West Coast did not have injury runs, they would take Essendon and GWS's eventual spots in the 8. Also, their defence is quite significantly below the standard for an AFL team. They were by far the weakest top 8 team in their defence last year, and their fixture is hard. In their first 9 games, I can only see them beating the Saints, Hawks and Giants. The rest are all really tough, and there's no guarantee they'll win all those 3. For their biggest win, I have them smashing the Hawks close to the end of the season. Their fixture is soft by then, but I have them copping a massive loss against their number 1 bogey team, Richmond. I feel like there will be a lot more smashings this year. In 13th spot, I've got North Melbourne with 9 wins of their 23 games and a percentage controversially high. They are another team that will feature in a drawn game this year. For me, 13th spot means possible finals contention. I think Alistair Clarkson got the rest that he needed. If they don't finish 17th or higher this year, they've got some serious problems. They've got quite some up-and-coming talent in their list for sure, and as the Wooden Spooner, they deservedly have an easy fixture. I can see Horne-Francis and Wardlaw becoming star players in the coming years. They also gained the likes of Griffin Logue and Darcy Tucker, which could really lift their side. For their biggest win, I've predicted them to demolish Hawthorn. I apologise to Hawks fans if this is hard to watch. And for their biggest loss, I have them getting smashed at the Cattery. Geelong is nearly impossible to beat there as we saw last year. Geelong at GMHBA and the Dockers at Optus are probably North Melbourne's hardest games as history has shown. Coming in at 12th is Essendon with 10 wins and being the lowest team to record a percentage over 100. Every time they drop off, they seem to just rise up the ladder again. Then they drop, rise and drop. The reason I have them 12th is that I don't think they're better than any other teams than the 6 I just mentioned. Also, I think the gap between 8th and 13th will be reasonably tight. Essendon did good in the draft and trade period, but if Aaron Francis didn't leave, I would put them higher. I'm expecting something big from Brad Scott in the coming years. He had gotten North Melbourne into the finals and final contention a few times, and I think the same will happen with Essendon. For their biggest win, I've gone with a 60-point thumping of the Giants at Marvel Stadium. The Bombers are pretty good at Marvel, and for their biggest loss, I have them losing to the Cats by 45 points in a more competitive biggest loss than the teams below. In 11th spot, I have the Gold Coast Suns with 11 wins but a low percentage. I think they are almost there but not quite. I just feel like they're going to be a little bit unlucky this year, and they always do bad at the end of the season. Like I said, the finals race will be super tight. Gold Coast aren't really consistent. Yes, they can easily pull off wins against Sydney, Freo and Richmond, but I don't think they do well away from home, even against the low teams. If you want to make finals, you need to bank as many as those easy away wins as you can. They are also a team that is somewhat prone to losing games by bigger margins. They have a lot of talent in their list, such as Anderson, Rao, and Chol. Chol is a big threat up forward. For their biggest win, I have them beating the Hawks by 11 goals, just like they did last year. And in their worst game, I have them being dominated in a Q clash late in the season. In 10th spot, I have the Swans with the same record as the Suns, but a very high percentage. Usually when a team gets smashed in a grand final, they drop off drastically. They could potentially break that trend, but I am playing it safe by predicting a big drop-off until it doesn't happen. They have one of and maybe the hardest fixture in the league, along with Fremantle, the Western Bulldogs, and Port Adelaide. They're still a very good team as they have lots of talent, but Franklin is starting to lose form and he is getting older and more burnt out. I feel like as times they've been relying on Franklin too much, and that's what might cost them a final spot this year. They've got some great young talent, and I feel that young talent is more reliable than their older talent. For their biggest win, I have tipped them to be the first team that records a 100-point win and misses the finals in the same year since 2018 against Hawthorn. Sydney are very capable of recording big wins. I've predicted a rather soft big loss against the Tigers by only 32 points. I just think they'll be unlucky in a lot of games and lose a lot of close ones like Port Adelaide last year. Speaking of Port Adelaide, I have them in 9th, winning 12 games with a percentage much lower than the Swans. I think they might be better than some of the teams above them. Georgiades can potentially be a superstar in the coming years. You've also got Dixon, Wines, and Boak still there. The reason I have them 9th is because their fixture is much tougher than that of the team I have 8th. Having to play Geelong twice is pretty bad, and not only that, like the Bulldogs, they have to play their bogey team Richmond twice as well. They always seem to do poorly against the higher quality teams, and those are the teams you need to beat if you want to show that you are a true contender for the finals. Also, their defense wasn't as good last year. For their biggest win, I've gone with a 62-point victory once again against Hawthorn. And in their biggest loss, I have them not showing up against the Pies early in the season. This is a big call, but in 8th spot, I have Adelaide, ahead of the Power only on percentage. Their list has a lot of young up-and-coming players that can make the club a threat to any other team. I'm expecting them to be a very scary side at home. Their talent is only increasing and they did excellent in the trade and draft. Isaac Rankin could easily make a huge impact to this team, who has already got some rising talent. At their best, they can be pretty dangerous, especially early in the season. Last year, they almost beat a Dockers side set to right. They just need to work on banking some more wins away from home and in the middle of the season. Their biggest win will be a 10-goal pounding of the Giants on their home deck. And in their worst game, this is a big call, but I have them losing to Collingwood by 78 points at the MCG. Adelaide have always played poorly against Collingwood at the MCG recently. In 7th spot, I have my team, Fremantle, with 13 wins and a nice round percentage of 110 on the dot. I think we've got some great quality on our list with the additions of O'Meara, Jackson and Corbett. But with the losses of Lobb and Logue and Akers, that quality might have lowered a little bit. I'm concerned about our forward line as Lobb was great at his best. We need someone like Jaya Miss or Nathan O'Driscoll to step up. I'm still concerned about our wet weather game plan. We're not great at Optus late in the season because that's when the ground gets wet, as shown as last year. Our fixture is horrific and definitely one that makes us earn our wins. Last year we proved that we can beat the best teams, However, I don't think it'll be the case this year as much as last year. In our best game, I have us thumping the Hawks by 82 points at Optus Stadium. We're very good against the low teams, but I have us getting smashed by a new bogey team, Collingwood. In 6th place, I have the Melbourne Demons with 14 wins and a very high percentage. On paper, they are one of the best teams in the competition. The reason I don't have them in the top 4 is because, at times, they can be unreliable. Towards the end of the 2022 season, they were inconsistent, dropping games against the Bulldogs and smashing Freo the week after, then going out in straight sets in the finals 4 weeks later. Yes, they had the new additions of Grundy, but they need to end the season well if they want to be a top team. I feel there's going to be a few unlucky teams next year, and Melbourne is one of them. They'll be like Port Adelaide last year, losing a lot of close games. For their biggest win, I've gone with a 144-point thumping of Hawthorn early in the season. And for their worst game, they'll lose by 29 points against Geelong at GMHBA. In 5th place, I have Collingwood with 15 wins, a draw, and a percentage even higher than Melbourne's. I really think they'll be able to take the next step and win by bigger margins. However, I feel like there are teams around them that are better and more deserving of a top 4 spot. If they had Brodie Grundy, I would put them higher. They've got a great list that's on the rise, and Ginnivan's only out for 2 games. We all know how dangerous he can be when he's at his best. Collingwood are also one of those teams that apply a lot of pressure. The formula for the Pies to win by bigger margins is for them to progress as far as they can through the second and third quarters and apply that pressure in the last quarter. Simple as that, and that's certainly possible. For their biggest win, I've gone with a 78-point thumping of Adelaide. Adelaide, Fremantle and Melbourne are the teams that Collingwood are best against, especially at the MCG. For their biggest loss, I've gone with a very low margin of 21 points against Carlton. In 4th place, I have Brisbane only half a game ahead of Collingwood with a lower percentage. They have added some great players to their list. That includes Dunkley and Gunston. They've got a lot of depth up forward, but their defence is a weak spot. They should be pushing for the minor premiership and even the flag. The reason I have them 4th is because there's usually a period of time where they're unreliable. They lost both Melbourne games by over 55 points and lost to Hawthorn, Richmond and Fremantle away from home. They even lost to Essendon at the Gabba. Also, it's hard to recover from a smashing in a final sometimes, even if it's not a grand final. We saw that with Port Adelaide 2021 and 2022. Their biggest win will be a 112-point demolition of Hawthorn midway through the season. I have them suffering a horrific upset loss against my team, the Dockers, late in the season. I feel it's hard to predict how we'll do against Brisbane when we play them twice. In 3rd, I have Carlton with 18 wins and a drawn game, and a solid percentage for a top 4 team. The reason I placed them here so high is because there's always one team from the bottom 10 that jumps into the top 4 the following year. Carlton have got lots of talent in their list, and they've got a very easy fixture compared to some of the teams above them. Maybe not in the first half of the season. Their best footy can compete against anyone, and I can only see them getting better in 2023. They came so close against Melbourne and Collingwood last year, and they comfortably beat Fremantle and Sydney. They now know what it's like to be a top-tier team and have little excuse for missing finals this year. With guns such as Cripps, Walsh and Dale in the midfield, Mackay and the Curnow brothers up forward and Wiedering in the back, they are set for a massive year in 2023. In their best game, they will humiliate the Western Bulldogs by 12 goals. And in their worst game, they'll lose to the Swans at the SCG by 22 points. In second, I have the reigning premiers Geelong recording 19 wins and a percentage of more than 150. They are probably the best team in the competition at the moment. Losing Selwood may hurt a bit, but it's not too big of a loss, since they still have quite a few up-and-coming players. Plus, they still have Hawkins. They have the oldest and most experienced list in the competition. However, it's unlikely for a team to claim the minor premiership 2 years in a row, and with their players getting old and burnt out, it'll be harder for them to keep up with some of the better players from the better teams. Geelong is one team that has an equal balance between their attack and defence, and both are powerhouses. They're dangerous all around the ground. For their biggest win, I have them annihilating GWS by 118 points at their own fortress. And I'm predicting a bad Cats display against the Tigers at the MCG, losing by 5 goals. As you are watching this, you know who I have first, the Richmond Tigers, winning 20 of 23 with a percentage more realistic than Geelong's. Taranto and Hopper are two great additions to the Tigers list. With Martin and Cochin getting old now, those two stars are good backup players for when Martin and Cochin are not in form. When all four of them are in form, Richmond's midfield is nearly unstoppable. Not to mention their forward line and back line are already equal in great depth. They are definitely one of the front runners for the minor premiership. I'm predicting a 2018 Richmond home and away season to return in 2023. I think there will be a tight race between Richmond, Geelong and Carlton for the minor premiership. As their biggest win, they will thump the Western Bulldogs by 82 points. We know the Dogs are a bogey team to Richmond, and in their worst game, Collingwood will comfortably come over the top of them. Now for some big calls. I've predicted Richmond to be eliminated in straight sets. No minor premier has ever gone out in straight sets, but Richmond at times aren't reliable in finals. In 2 of their 3 premiership years, they were the underdog. They were the hot favourite in 2018, but choked in a preliminary final. My next big call is for the Bulldogs to win none of their first 9 games. This is a lot bigger than the last. They've got 6 games in their first 9 that are pretty tough. They've got Melbourne, Brisbane, Richmond, Freo away, Port away, and Carlton. Then there's GWS away, and St Kilda and Hawthorn at Marvel. 3-6 is very possible. 2-7 maybe. 1-8 quite unlikely. But going 0-9 is massive. Now I'm going to make the biggest and most outlandish big call. Carlton to start 10-0. They need to be like Melbourne 2021 to do that, winning against the good teams and losing against the bad teams. They've got 50-50 matchups against Richmond, Brisbane and Collingwood in their home state, plus the reigning premiers Geelong and Adelaide away. But I think it's possible, but they need to get really lucky to win all 10. A big call that is not as big as the last 2, but I've predicted 8 or more games to be decided by over 90 points. Big margins like that are pretty rare these days. This hasn't happened since 2018, and that was because Carlton and Gold Coast were way below everyone else. If Hawthorn, GWS and West Coast all have horrible years, there can easily be quite a few margins this size. My last big call is that Brisbane lose 3 or more games at their home fortress, the Gabba. They've got to play Melbourne, Collingwood, Fremantle, Sydney, Richmond and Geelong there. Most of them are good enough that they can maybe pinch one off the Lions at the Gabba. We saw what Melbourne did in the last round of the season. So now I'm going to show you how my predictions came to be by using Squiggle. Feel free to pause the video if you want to look at what I predicted for each game carefully. Some of these are very big calls. So at the end of round 6, I have Carlton off to a flying start, Essendon gaining momentum early, and the Bulldogs and Hawthorn winless. I've predicted the grand final rematch in round 6 to be a banger, as well as the Anzac Eve and Anzac Day clashes, the latter of which Essendon pulls an upset. That round, Fremantle beat the Dogs by 41 points. Do you remember what happened when there was a 41-point margin in a Freo vs Dogs game at Optus? After round 12, Carlton are still on top, but they have lost one game to Sydney in round 11. Round 7 is where the Dockers start to decline as their fixture gets tough. Dropping games against the Lions, Cats, Swans and Demons, as you can see, I have Melbourne humiliating the Hawks in the biggest margin of the season. The Bulldogs finally pick up their first win against Adelaide in a thriller. Round 18 is done and Geelong have knocked Carlton out of first place. Unfortunately, the Dockers' finals hopes are in jeopardy, being 9-8 after a 5-1 start. The Bulldogs are starting to get better, pulling an upset against Collingwood and almost pinching one off Freo. Brisbane start to pick up a few wins, including a 112-point thumping of Hawthorn. The finals race is very tight, with 7th place only 2 wins ahead of 14th. In a huge upset, St Kilda win a thriller against Richmond. North Melbourne are slowly falling out of finals contention. As you can see, the final ladder on the right is exactly what I predicted. Richmond taking the top spot, St Kilda losing 8 in a row only for the Bulldogs to jump ahead of them. Both draws of the season happened in the same round. Now for the final series. As you can see, I have Richmond going out in straight sets. Melbourne humiliating the Dockers in the elimination final, as there's always 1 or 2 finals that are smashing. I've predicted Carlton to win the flag, and I think they'll win it due to excessive luck. And because it's a grand final, I have to predict a smashing, based on the last 2 grand finals, which is probably not going to happen. I'm predicting it only based on recent history, not what I think is going to happen. Now for the awards. For the Brownlow medal, I've gone with Clayton Oliver. He is definitely one of the best midfielders in the competition, and he came 3rd in the 2021 Brownlow count. I think he is set for a massive season in 2023, and he's one player I can only see getting better in the coming years. For the Coleman medal, I have Tom Lynch. He is very dangerous up forward for the Tigers. He can kick so many goals when he's on, even though he can miss very easy shots as well. The only possible case against him, other than the missing easy shots, is that he has to compete against Harry Mackay and Tom Hawkins, 2 of the most dangerous full forwards in the competition. And for the Norm Smith medal, I've gone with Sam Walsh. He is one of the key players in one of the most dangerous midfields in the comp. When he's on, he can be a huge threat to any other player. I can only see him getting better and better in the coming years, and maybe even better until he retires. So there we have it, my AFL 2023 season predictions. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe for more quality AFL content, and I will see you in the next video. We are so close to the start of the season. Thanks for watching. Bye.